The following story has been worked on for the past 6 weeks and was made with serious caution of statement and confirmed with the accounts of multiple student government personnel on the record as sources. This semester, our student government flirted with turmoil but never made the serious commitment. Back in early March of this year, CSUN held the primary election for our executive board. That's our president, vice president, and senate president. Through leaks, tips, and statements from a variety of sources within the student government, a worrying fact reared its ugly head on the other side of our university election. An election that this news program finds was completely and utterly fraudulent. Between March 9th and 10th of 2017, CSUN began taking ballots from students voting for the executive board of our student government. A few days after the election, however, a troubling issue came to light. Students who had voted electronically for the executive board reported issues with their votes. Students who went to vote were being thanked via email for submitting their votes. Votes that they themselves did not submit. After this, Attorney General Christian Ogata began an investigation into the reported voting issue.
I received a call from our advisor, Savannah Baltera, and I was called into the office. From there, myself, Savannah, and the Director of Operations, Don Matus, all spoke about what was happening. I had been informed that there was potential voter irregularity happening, given a lot of things that had happened. So our Director Matus had a couple people come forward and say they couldn't vote in the election. Following that, we started looking into the voting record and noticing that votes were coming in seconds after one another, all for the same ticket. And so we were looking into that. Our advisor started calling people who had received votes or who had votes cast and asking them if they had cast that vote. Several of them had not, so he received email correspondence back from them.
After finishing his investigation, Ogata presented his investigation case to the CSUN Supreme Court, where he advocated for the primary election to be invalidated.
The votes that were coming in large groups and were coming in all minutes and seconds after each other were for the same ticket. All highlight the inescapable conclusion that this election must be invalidated. The CSUN Constitution states that CSUN members shall have the right to vote in elections, which is the Bill of Rights, Section 5.
You made two essential conclusions. The first was to invalidate the election, and the second was to change over the voting system. What were the issues that you found with the voting system, the Campus Labs voting system, and why did you want it to change over to the ACE username and password system?
The ACE ID, using your ACE account is a lot more secure because that's a password that you create for yourself. It's a lot more difficult to have. Students wouldn't have access, or any person for whatever reason would not have access to a large list of those. So if by chance there was potential that that was happening or somebody needed that, it would be much harder for students to do that, or for anybody to do that for that matter. With the Campus Labs voting system, all that was needed was an entry number, which is a lot less secure than using your whole ACE account, which is what you have to use to log onto the computers and stuff.
After this decision, Ogata handed down the investigation to the General Counsel Office of the University President, which awaits to be given to the UNLV Police. In an earnest interest to find out what was found in Ogata's investigation, Studio G submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to be granted information for the purpose of informing the public. But the investigation is currently being compiled for UNLV Police by General Counsel, who is working with the Student Conduct Office. This qualifies as an exemption to the FOIA request. Its time in office, however, has not boasted for a quick turnover to UNLV Police. Students that are voted into CSUN office on campus are considered civil employees. Because of this, the Executive Board election is technically considered a public election. This means election fraud on campus can be prosecuted as a Class D felony, which would result in $5,000 minimum in fines or 1 to 4 years in prison, a sentence that no university would want to inflict on any student. Which leads us to this question. UNLV Police is still waiting the handing down of the investigation case, a case that might pursue a university student with a felony. It is the question of this reporter. If this case is something the university wants to pursue, if the outcome is a student felon, one that might be from student government, we have yet to get our answer, but will persist with the UNLV Police as well as the General Counsel Office of the President. But the story of a potential felon is not where the story ends, but rather where it begins. In our second part, we will continue our story with a student government member who is potentially responsible for the election invalidation and what one leaked email has to show about why they knew that this election was susceptible to fraud since last semester. Understand who and what was the reason for the CSUN Student Government Executive Board election and invalidation. One must look at the events of this year, in fact, just last semester, to see who was in charge, but more importantly, who knew that a fraudulent election was just on the horizon since last semester. In a leaked email that was given over text, a member of the CSUN Election Committee cited that the voting system was susceptible to fraudulent votes and advocated for candidates and students to not commit voter fraud. The person that saw this concern, Don Matus.
Quite frankly, because the Senate election went so smoothly, I didn't think it was necessary for the executive election. In hindsight, I should have probably looked into it. So it wasn't a punishment. It was just saying, there's no way for us to be absolutely 100% secure with any online system. So calm down. I was just warning people, calm down. You're going to make it worse if you freak out.
Do you at all, or can you say at all, who sent this text or email?
This was for me.
Oh, okay. This concern, being sounded off since last semester, is now seen as a Nostradamus-like prediction of the issues of this semester when our primary election was invalidated due to fraudulent votes. But that concern was not monogamous to just last semester. The day of the election, an email titled "It's Election Day" was sent out to all candidates warning of a rumor. The email went on saying this, that a candidate, someone connected to a ticket has a list of NSHI IDs and plans on using them to vote multiple times. Please do not cheat. Please do not try to cheat. We will shut online voting down and switch over to the Involvement Center where most people cannot vote due to the ACE ID issue we ran into last year. The rumor in the email was said to be the existence of a list of NSHI IDs that a candidate or student could use to give themselves a handful of votes in order to put themselves over the top or make another candidate look like they are cheating. Then I'm going to show you a document about the election that went out the night prior. We're just going to go over the material in it. Did you send this email? Is this a false email?
No, I did send it. Like I said, I try to think the best of everybody. So I didn't fully, based on who it was coming from, I was just like, okay, he's crying wolf, he's freaking out a little bit, I don't think it's going to happen. I think everybody's going to be above board. It seems to be a good group of candidates we have. So but at the same time, I wanted to put the warning out there. That's why I had this. That's why I emailed out saying, please do not cheat.
But a more important issue remains. If there was a concern about the system being susceptible to fraudulent votes, why was the system not changed back to the ACE password voting system, a system that was much more secure? That's the question we asked to the person who could have made that change in the first place, Don Matus. Do you feel that the system of ACE username and ACE password, which was the system that we were kind of, as far as we know, was safe and secure and all that, we used it for the matter of convenience and for the matter of people being able to vote. Do you feel it is an apt comparison to say that safety and security was sacrificed for convenience?
Yeah, I would say that. Again, it's hindsight. People did need to log in with their ACE ID, or not their ACE ID, their NSHI numbers, and you just don't assume that people are going to gather NSHI numbers or try and generate lists of NSHI numbers and do something like that. I mean, it takes a special kind of low person to want to do something like that. So, and I don't think that low. So perhaps I should change that thinking, but I don't know. I tried to look on the bright side of everything.
If there was any question if Don Matus didn't know that anyone's going to rig the election, one shocking revelation in a statement Don told us put that theory to rest. But was there anyone at the time, including you, that felt that the voting system faced a potential risk of being rigged?
It's interesting you ask that, because it's the same person that came to me the night before the election, or emailed both myself and Savannah. And then later I talked to this person and he was like, yeah, I had this plan, doll. I had a plan in place. I created a plan as soon as I found out how easy it was to cheat both of these elections. And I'm just like, you really shouldn't have told me that. And he's like, I didn't do it because I have the support out here to, and I'm just like, so I knew that there were people who were already planning for it. Whether or not that person actually followed through with it, no, that's purely conjecture, and.
We still don't know who was responsible for submitting the fraudulent votes. As far as this reporter knows, there are multiple students blaming each other for a tizzy of things pertaining to the election invalidation. But here is the important thing to keep in mind. The fraudulent votes that were cast were not caused by an electronical error or technical malfunction. Someone at this university purposely casted these votes. It is our hope that this report will urge the General Counsel Office to streamline the investigation to UNLV police instead of having it die on a desk. The person or persons who committed the potential felony are still unnamed and may still be on this campus, or more importantly, within our student government. James Schaeffer, Studio G. After our two-part story, we wanted to revisit one last time the story of student government voter fraud. In this final part, we gave the tough questions to two individuals involved in student government that strove to win the presidential election. After the urging of our sources within student government about who was responsible for the voter fraud, we conducted our interviews. Out of all that ran during the student government elections, Skylar Brown, the former Senate president, and Fabian Donate, a former Health and Sciences senator, we wanted to ask the key question of the involvement in voter fraud. What do you say to any accusations that you or anyone in your ticket was concerned with anyone else in your ticket and used entry votes for anyone else?
Definitely not us. We were all at the election complaint. We all made public comments like, find the person who did this. We were 100% sure it wasn't us.
We asked Fabian the same question.
I feel that that sentence itself is just a way to criminalize people. To say that I had access to student IDs, I mean, everybody in student government had access to them. Signing into an event, most of the time they ask you to fill that in, so that's just another generalization of something that, a material that everybody could have.
We wanted to pressure through, though, with better understanding the office politics of student government. We found that these two presidential contenders have had a rocky past, one of which ran with the other in mind. The other accusation was that you ran purely to make sure Fabian didn't win. Is there any credence to that?
I mean, Fabian, he would have put out a lot of great things as president, but they all would have been for the benefit of Fabian, not for students.
In order to understand the possibility of having a list of NCIDs which had been believed as the tool used to rig the election, we asked the question of ownership of such a list. Have you ever, at any point prior to this semester or during the semester, ever had a list of NCIDs?
Not prior to the spring semester or any semester.
You said prior to spring semester. During spring semester, did you have the ability or did you ever have a list of NCIDs?
Not during the spring semester, no.
We asked both candidates to posit, if not them, who they thought was responsible.
I think I know, but I'm also inherently biased towards Fabian. So you have, colored glasses, you blinders on. So maybe I'm skewed and biased towards the fact that I just have seen him do a lot of shady things. But I also don't want to think he's like a bad person.
What is your response, what are your emotions to that?
I mean, I think that, take it or leave it, it's student government. There will be, every election has some sort of situation that happens like that.
We ended with the question of if we will ever know.
With given time, we'll find out, and we'll see if any repercussions happen from that, but I'm not necessarily looking at that because it's not my place to say, It's, I will go through the rest of my day, follow my classes, plan for my finals, and the rest will just go on.
Do you think that whoever did this was within student government?
Oh yeah. No one cares enough about student government besides student government.
But if that wasn't enough, we close with a bombshell that came out of this investigation, and the answer from the former Senate president might shock you. Do you think the homecoming election is an issue?
I think if you look at the numbers, you will see the exact same thing happened with certain teams. Someone definitely cheated in the homecoming election.
We may never know who was responsible, but only those responsible for the investigation have that obligation. Otherwise, the votes that matter to an election for a position that oversees $1.3 million will always be questioned till an investigation occurs. James Schaeffer, Studio G.